Paul Richards, who was then the general manager of the Baltimore Orioles, used to spend the winters out here, and he, on occasion, met Bill Wyrick down at Charlie Briley's Pink Pony.
Come on.
Yeah. And of course, they just chatted. They didn't have anything to drink or anything like that. But as turned out, Bill Wyrick said to Paul, he said, "Why don't you bring the Baltimore Orioles out here?" And Paul Richards said, "You don't have a stadium. Build me a stadium and I'll bring them." Lo and behold, he should never have done that, because within a few days, the baseball committee was formed.
That was spring 1955. The Scottsdale Baseball Club raised funds to build the rustic wooden stadium by pre-selling lifetime box seats. In February 1956, the Baltimore Orioles became the first team to take the field at the new Scottsdale Stadium.
We had what was called Old Timers Day. It would always be Father McGuire's. He'd usually give the invocation, and they would have major league ball players be on the program. Those were the days that you really had camaraderie between the ball players and the community as a whole.
For the first 6 years, the Scottsdale Baseball Club ran spring training. But in 1962, the newly formed all-volunteer Scottsdale Charros took over and continue to operate spring training today.
They were to be the sports arm of the Chamber of Commerce and the committee the community as a whole.
After the city assumed their obligations and paid off the debt, then the Charros ended up with really inherited the lease that the Scottsdale Baseball Club had.
Scottsdale residents and visitors alike loved the up-close and personal feel of the original stadium. But after a few decades, it began showing its age.
In the late 80s, we were about to, a 15-year agreement with the Giants was about to expire. And about 3 years before it expired, Al Rosen said, "I'm not coming back to Scottsdale unless you fix up your stadium." Couldn't understand that. It rained in the restrooms and we didn't have enough, he was just really being quite pushy. Yeah.
Terrible.
He was terrible. And so we said, okay, so we formed a little baseball committee and started searching for new sites and couldn't find any. So we ended up deciding that the best place to do it is to tear down the stadium as it existed and replace it with a new one. There's only a couple problems. We didn't own the land, and we didn't have any money.
The solution was to ask the citizens of Scottsdale to pay for it through bond funds. The ballot question was a testimonial to Scottsdale's love of the game.
Citizens of Scottsdale passed the measure like 80-20. It was fascinating. And what was amazing about that in that time, and it's a testimony to this city, is that to the best of Al Rosen's knowledge, who knew baseball like the back of his hand, this was only the third community in the nation who had voluntarily agreed to build a stadium by themselves. And it was a fantastic thing. It really was. And as you can tell, it didn't turn out too bad.
Scottsdale is proud to have hosted Major League Baseball spring training for 50 years. The month-long season now generates an estimated $16 million in economic impact for Scottsdale. The Scottsdale Charros ensure that spring training benefits Scottsdale in another significant way by donating thousands of dollars a year to Scottsdale civic and charitable groups, particularly those benefiting youth and education.
Over the last 15 to 20 years, the way that the Charro organization has evolved, they sell more ads than we had in gross revenue. It's just amazing what they do, and they have such fantastic programs now. Educator of the Year, they're funding 8 at a time, full 4-year ride scholarships. They donate monies to just dozens of local civic organizations, and that community impact is very, very hard to measure.
Well, and there's an old saying that that I copped from Ronald Reagan, which is, there is no limit to what a man can do if he doesn't mind who gets the credit. My wife and I were down here for the last game. We sat over in the Charro Lodge overlooking this whole thing. And one could not help but be humbled and proud of having a small part in this total effort.